Hello students, my name is Gaurav Bansal and I'm doing this series of videos for the PT 2023 and I'm covering various important topics in the Indian economy with the MCQ practice, previous year question practice, and in this series we have already done a lot of videos. If you're watching this channel for the first time, maybe you can check out the other videos as well. In this particular video, I'm going to discuss two topics, which is the budget 2023 and the current affairs related to budget and taxation for the year 22-23. So let us start with the question number 1 here. The question number 1 is the Mishti Scheme will be launched for. So this type of question do come in examination. So I have prepared them for giving you some hint, or maybe one of them can come itself directly, or similar question can come itself directly on similar type of scheme. So these are some of the important topics according to me, and more than important, this will give you the idea how to approach the budget. Okay, already budget concepts have been discussed, so that is a separate video I have already covered and that is available on the playlist or my channel, that also you can check. And for this specific budget we are now discussing the various schemes, because generally the questions are either from concepts for which there is a separate video. In this particular one I am discussing the schemes or this particular year 23 year budget. So Mishti Scheme, if you just go by the term Mishti is a very popular term in Bengal, so we may think of, we try to link it with Bengal, but that is not correct. The answer is C, mangrove plantation along the coastline. That is the answer here, and there is no explanation required here because these are generally factual question, pure fact question, where you need to be aware of the scheme and the program to answer that. Next is National Data Governance Policy to be brought out in the Union Budget 23-24 for, so data governance policy, okay, this was announced for startups and academia. Okay, so ease of doing business, governance, skill India, all of them may look correct, but as I'm saying, you can't answer such question based on the guesswork. Same is for the question number 3, Green Credit Program. So Agriculture Credit Scheme, Agriculture Accelerator Fund, Wildlife Protection Act. Okay, none of these is the answer. Environment Protection Act is the answer for the third one. So that is what we have here as the answer. Again, you can't pick it by guesswork, because if you just go by guesswork, Green Credit Program looks to be for agriculture credit, because agriculture is very much associated with the term green, okay, just like environment. So you can't do it on the basis of guesswork. Try other questions where you can make some educated guesses, but not for the schemes based question. That's what I'm suggesting. Next, which among the following is not the part of 7 priorities, which is defined this time as Saptrishi. So this is a tendency in India that when we have a number 9, we use the term Navratna, okay, and when we have the number 7, we have this tendency to use Indradhanush, or this time Saptrishi. Okay, so these are some of the iconography we have related to certain numerals or the numbers, No Devi, Tri Dev. Okay, so likewise we do have such kind of usage for specific numbers. Dashavtar. Okay, now which among the following is not the part of 7 priority? So A, B and C are the part of the priority here. Okay, the answer here is D, financial inclusion is not one of the priority. In total budget defined Saptrishi as the 7 key priority of the budget. You should be aware of that. Question can come, which of these are included, which of these are not included, likewise. This is a simple question, but do read out on the Saptrishi. Now, which of the following, next question, has the highest share in the proposed expenditure? So budget, as we should be aware of, is for the coming year. The budget was announced on the last working day of January, and when it was announced for the coming year, means 1st of April 2023 to 31st of March 2024. So when budget was announced, it was for the coming financial year. So it is always proposed. So if we look at the expenditure of India, then for several years, in fact for a very, very long time, the biggest expenditure in India is the same entry, and that is interest payment. Okay. Our debt to GDP ratio is quite significant, and interest rates in India are also relatively high compared to the Western world. Okay. Debt to the GDP ratio. So debt to GDP ratio for center at present is somewhere around 56 or 57%. If you have to pay that much as a loan, just think of the interest on that. Even if government is able to borrow this much of fund at 6% interest, okay? Let us say if I borrow this much of fund at 6% interest, even that would mean 3.5% of GDP per year. Okay. Our overall budget, the central budget, is about $550 billion. Okay. So roughly about 20%, less than 20% in fact, okay, 18%, 17% of the GDP, the budget is. Now, out of that 3.5%, okay, almost a quarter, okay, if we consider this total to be around 16%, let us say, almost a quarter is purely on the interest payment for this debt. So, a quarter of our total budget goes to the interest payment. This is just to reveal you some of the statistics. Even if you are not able to recall the exact number, you should have a broader perspective in your mind that how much is the borrowing burden on our government, debt burden on our government, how much interest would that translate into. In fact, interest rate is not 6%, interest rate today is about 7%. Okay? And at that rate, if you pay for this much of debt, that would be about 4% of the GDP. And that is why this would be roughly quarter, because our interest payment at present are about quarter, 25% of our total expenditure. Not so long ago, 2 years ago, at the peak of the COVID, our interest payment burden rose to almost 30% because we had to take too big a loan, short-term loan. Okay. So, defense is barely about 8 to 9% of GDP, okay, and that to put together combined defense budget. And center-sponsored scheme, center sector scheme, they together are about only, just give me 1 second, 18-19% of the GDP. So even they together cannot surpass the interest payment. So A is almost equal to the other three put together. So that much is the difference. And there is no other expenditure which comes close to the interest payment. Okay, so this is irrespective of this year budget. This is universally for a very, very long time the highest expenditure for government. And it is likely to remain there at least for some considerable period. Question number 6. What will be the global hub for the millets? So again, you can't make a guesswork. Okay, you need to know specifically from the budget here. Answer in this case is Indian Institute of Millet Research in Hyderabad. So we have defined this as a global hub for the millets. Question number 7. Which of the following statement is incorrect about Indian economy? So this is a question on trend. At least on the questions where we are talking about trends, I can discuss a bit. On the scheme or pure fact-based question, there is not much of scope of discussion actually. Now in this one, we are talking about incorrect about Indian economy. So the capital expenditure of the union government has increased approximately 4 times since fiscal year 2016. Well, this is correct. Okay. The capital expenditure of the government today is about 19% of the GDP. Okay. Put together, if we add the funds available for the states to borrow for capital expenditure at zero interest, this would surpass about 22%. So that much are we spending on capital expenditure, okay? And this used to be only 6% in 2026. Our breakup was 94% on current expenditure, 6% on capital expenditure. In our budget, we call current expenditure as revenue expenditure. So that's what I'm talking about. Revenue expenditure, capital expenditure. 2016. Today, we have moved from here to roughly this level, 78% and 22%. So this is the ratio today, almost 4 times, okay? So in fact, this was also less than 6, 5.7, 5.8 was there, okay? So roughly it will make up for 4 times. So first is correct. And this is a considerable achievement, by the way, because that means government is actually working for the well for the nation here. The NPAs of the banks have been falling for the last 2 years. Actually, this is also correct. Okay, one of the big criticism against the government was that this government has allowed the public banks or public sector banks to fail. It has helped the crony capitalists like Malayas or Nirav Modi, etc. Okay, Modi, Chor, these kind of things were also said. But now we are watching that NP of banks are falling continuously. Okay, now they have fallen almost to the pre-2014 levels. So that is a good thing. Then there has been a constant increase in forex reserves. So this could have been true actually. This could have been true because this was going perfect almost except for the last year. Okay, so there has been a consistent increase in the forex reserve. Okay, if there is no time frame given, like here since 2016, since last 2 years, in the budgetary context, if there is no time reference given, you can consider it to be 5 year or a decade at most. You do not have to go too much past, but not less than 5 year or more than 10 years. Okay, it should not come like this actually. There should be a reference year in the last 5 years, because in the forex reserve means since when? Since eternity. Okay, since Adam and Eve were removed from the Eden garden, if we believe the Christian mythology, or if we talk about the other times. Anyways, the point you got, the reference period should be there. But since reference period is not there, I'm taking it to be 5 years here. If we talk about the last 5 years, okay, let us say I redefine the statement in 5 years. Okay, now this is a better statement. But even if we talk about the last 5 years or 10 years, this would have been correct except for 2022. Because in 2022, we lost a lot of our forex reserves, almost $75 billion we lost. Although we recovered also later on a lot of it, and the net decrease was almost about $40 billion. But there was otherwise constant increase. Our forex reserves were constantly rising, almost constantly rising. So what happened in 2022? In 2022, there was something called taper tantrum. Okay, if you do not know about taper tantrum, I've already covered that actually. If you search for taper tantrum with my name, you will find that, or otherwise if I have to define it very narrowly, then taper tantrum is when the US Fed increased the interest rate, and as a result, since America is offering better rate, all the people shift their money to USA. So people who had invested in India, in the stock markets, bond markets, they will take money out of India and take it to USA. If too many people are going to withdraw money from India, obviously forex reserves will reduce. So that is what has happened. So C is the answer. Okay, C. A and B are correct, C is incorrect. We were asking for which is incorrect here. So C is the answer. 8th, regarding Agri Accelerator Fund, consider the following statement. So again, purely a scheme based question. In this case, it aims to encourage agriculture startup by young entrepreneur. It attempts to implement cost effective solutions to the problem encountered in introducing contemporary technology. That is also correct. Both of these are correct. And third, it is based upon government fund of fund strategy to extend to agriculture sector. That is also correct. What is fund of fund strategy? That we create a reserve fund for the already present many of the scheme based funds. So this is a fund of fund. Okay, it will accelerate present schemes. So in this case, D is the answer. With that, I have covered some of the questions from the budget. Okay, question like this, these, okay, do regularly come in the examination. Now we come to the current affairs. So the important topic from the taxation budget which have been in news in the previous year, they have been, one was 5 years of GST. This is important, and I'm expecting a question on GST may come this year. So GST was introduced in 2017, and in 2022 we completed 5 years of introduction of GST, and as a result, for almost a month, newspapers carried a lot of articles, in fact for more than a month. It started somewhere around in July last year, okay, and continued almost up to September. And then Bibek Debroy gave a statement, and then a single rate GST again came into news in October. So GST was in news for a lot of time. So there can be a question related to GST. Now the question can be to the any issue related to GST, any feature of GST. So everything about GST is relatively important given its coverage this year. But nothing can be guaranteed. Single rate GST as a topic I will cover, but other than that you need to be aware of the other aspects related to GST. Now angel tax. What is angel tax? I will cover that with the help of a question. Windfall tax also I will cover with the help of a question. In fact, for almost all of these topics I have a question. So I will cover these questions as a concept also when we will come across the question specifically. Let us look at the first question. Question number 1 is about angel tax. Angel investors are high net worth individuals who invest their personal income in business startup or small and medium scale companies. Is it correct statement? The statement is correct. Okay. What is the difference between angel investor and venture capital? Both are very, very similar. The difference is angel investor are high net worth individual. They are rich people who invest their personal income, their personal wealth. This is very important. Whereas venture capital, they are funds managed by professional managers. Okay, there is a company in which other rich people are depositing their money, and they expect this company to give them better returns. So there are so many different funds which invest in startups and multiply their valuation over time. So one is correct. And what are the features of angel investor? They are rich and they invest their personal money. Okay, whereas venture capital also do the same. They invest into the small companies, startups, okay, and they take the shares in them and exactly like this. But the difference is they are professionally managed companies. They are not individuals. Exceptions can be there, and secondly, they usually do not use their own funds. Okay, so that is how we differentiate between them. Anyways, this is not related to the angel tax. Now we talk about angel tax. Angel tax, formerly known as the Section 56(2) of the Income Tax Act, was introduced in 2010. So this is incorrect. So angel tax was introduced in 2016. Now coming to angel tax as a concept, what is that? Angel tax is the money that startup receive. I mean, it is on the money that startup receive. So let us say there is a company in India which is newly created. Okay, somebody announced that I will create this A to Z news company. They open a small office somewhere in Noida and they set up a small office and they hire 4 or 5 people. Then suddenly after 6 months, an application comes from Singapore that we want to buy 20% share in this news company A to Z for 100 crore rupees. Now this appears to be problematic. Why? Because this A to Z news company is not actually working yet. It does not have a viable business. I've already defined it as a small office in Noida with very few employees. So that means it is almost preparing to launch itself. Okay, it is just starting up and it has not yet launched operations. So on what basis it should get this valuation? If somebody is buying 20% of a company for 100 crore, that means company has market cap of 500 crore. Okay, अगर 20% शेयर 100 करोड़ के हुए तो 100% शेयर 500 करोड़ के हुए. Okay, so if 20% share are worth 100 crore, then 100% of the share, the total share would be worth 500 crore. Why a company like this with a small office will have 500 crore rupee valuation? So government will simply say that the 100 crore that you are receiving from this fund will not be treated as investment. We will not treat this as investment. We will treat this as your revenue, because this is unjustified. It is not suiting your valuation. Okay. For example, in a residential area somewhere, the average value of a house is 4 crore rupees. Okay, let us say an average 200 square yard house has a value of 4 crore rupees or 5 crore rupees in Delhi. Let us say in a particular area, let us say Shalimar Bagh. Now, in that area, if somebody say that I have received 50 crore rupee for a 200 square yard house, then there is some problem in that transaction, because this is 10 times the value of the land in the area. So there is some problem here, and that is what we are talking about. So if the person is receiving much above the market value, then we consider that money not as the investment. On investment there is no tax. But if you receive revenue, it will be treated as income of the corporation, the revenue of the corporation, and accordingly on that there will be corporation tax, okay, or the income tax basically. Okay, so that is why angel tax is not a separate tax as such. It is basically extension of the existing tax, okay, existing corporation tax or income tax on that company. That is essentially we are talking about. ठीक है, अब हम उस कंपनी पे जो हमारा स्टैंडर्ड टैक्स है, whatever is our standard tax, we apply that. So that is how we figure it out. So angel tax is a concept which treat investment into a company as revenue, and hence that comes under the tax principle or the tax net. So angel tax, that is on angel investments. So in this case only one is true, C is the answer. Question number 2, which is the holiday period provided to the startups under the Startup India scheme? So in this case answer is 5 years. Okay, if you are a startup, then for the 5 years you are exempted from certain taxes. Okay, that is the tax holiday period. Question number 3. Consider the following statement regarding angel tax. Angel investor pay the angel tax. Angel tax is paid by the startups only. So in this case, what should be the answer? Angel investor pay the angel tax. This is wrong, because I've just discussed the concept of angel tax. Angel investor doesn't pay it. It is the company which receive it. So it should be the tax paid by the startups. Okay, but itna easy nahi hai. Okay, it is a bit tricky. Only is the problem. Okay, whenever you see this word only, be careful. By the startup is fine, but only when we say it is wrong, because it is possible that it is not a startup, it is already an old company. The company was set up 10 years ago, but today the market value of the company should be 5 crore rupees or 10 crore rupees on the basis of the business it is doing. But then somebody say, I want to buy the shares of this company for a valuation of 800 crore. This will not make sense. Okay, so even on non-startup, even on an older company, there can be angel tax. So that is what got it wrong. Otherwise, it would have been correct. Okay, so it is tough. Okay? It was very difficult to rule out the second statement. First was easy. Fourth, which of the following is correct about windfall tax in India? So what is windfall tax? Windfall मतलब हवा से गिरा means falling from the pressure of wind. Think of it like that. You are Newton, you are sleeping under an apple tree. There is a very strong wind which is blowing. Because of the very strong wind, an apple falls on you. Okay, you get up and you discover gravity. Now that's an anecdote. I'm not trying to make fun of Newton. He was one of the most greatest scientists of all time. So I'm not trying to make fun of it. I'm trying to make fun of common people who believe such anecdotes. आपको लगता है न्यूटन को सेब गिरने से ग्रेविटी का पता लगा था? If you think that Newton discovered gravity because of falling apple, then that's a story for kids. Okay, that's not true. Gravity was very well known already for a very long time. Okay, in the 6th century in India, the first treatise on Gurutwakarshan was written. Okay, Gurutwakarshan is the gravity. Now similarly, the gravity was known to the Greeks also. So we knew what is gravity. What Newton did was not discovering what is gravity. What Newton did was identifying what is the force of gravity, what is the nature of gravity. Okay, how gravity work, how do we calculate it? He developed a theory on it. That is what Newton did. Anyways, coming back to this, I'm just simply saying what is windfall, that you are not making effort yet you get a fruit. That is a windfall. What is windfall tax? Think of it from a government angle. We know windfall. Now what is windfall tax? Tax which come to government without any sacrifice. Okay, tax which so I was just checking if the mic is having some problem or not, because the battery light was blinking. Now getting back here, the point is the windfall tax is the tax for which government does not have to sacrifice. What is the sacrifice government make? For a government, introducing new tax means a decrease in popularity, means public unrest, means the fear of losing next election. Okay, that is the sacrifice a government makes. Now windfall tax is the one where government will not be putting extra burden on the people. Think of it that way. If government will not put extra burden on people, they will not resent. So you are not putting extra burden on people. This is where government is not making a sacrifice. If government is putting burden on people, government is sacrificing some of its vote for the tax. So in the case of India, windfall tax is in the case of petrol. So after the Russia-Ukraine war, government of India increased the oil prices. Okay, when the international oil prices fell down, government did not allow the oil prices to go down. It adjusted the difference in the falling international prices and the current price by introducing a windfall tax. Okay, so that is what created the difference. So windfall tax did not affect the price of petrol. Basically the price which could have fallen did not fall. So there was no additional burden. So windfall tax does not affect the demand. Think of it. Windfall tax is a notional concept like inflation tax. So windfall tax is not a notional tax, it is an actual tax. Okay, it doesn't put additional burden, that is a different thing, but it is not a notional concept. Windfall tax decrease demand in the economy. If something is an actual tax, it should decrease demand in the economy, but we are comparing with the previous situation. If the petrol prices are constant, they are not changing for people, it should not decrease the demand. Okay, in this case A will be the answer. So it was also tough to choose between A and C. In fact, B itself could have been a bit confusing. So this was relatively a tough question. Think of it in that sense. Windfall tax for government, basically where they are not making sacrifice, means not putting additional burden on people. Now, not putting burden means it should not affect the demand. That is how we should look at it. Affect the demand. So compared to the demand that was there before this tax, so since you are not affecting price, demand is not affected. Next question 5. Consider the following statement. The budget 2022 announced 20% tax on the income from virtual digital assets, okay, such as cryptocurrencies, non-fungible tokens, NFTs, and 1% TDS and gift tax under certain condition to be paid by receiver of such digital asset as a gift. Okay, payer receiver is very important here. So in this case, let us look at the statement. The budget 2022 announced 20% tax on income from virtual digital asset, means Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies such as Ethereum, etc., and non-fungible tokens. I hope you know what is NFT. And if you do not know, I will cover it in one of the videos that will be coming soon. Now, there is something wrong in this statement, and that the rate of the tax. That rate of the tax was 30%. Else this statement could have been correct. Okay, so first statement is incorrect. And this was a major development. So here, even a statement like this can also come. Okay, generally UPSC doesn't play with data, but in very, very important areas or something which has been in news or debate, this can be asked. 1% TDS and gift tax under certain condition to be paid by receiver. So that is also there. So in this case, only 2 is correct. B is correct. Question number 6. Which of the following is incorrect regarding off-budget borrowing? So off-budget borrowing means which is outside the budget, which is off the record, which is outside the budget. Now let us look at the statements in this context. Off-budget borrowing are loans that are taken not by center directly but by other public institution which borrows on the direction of central government. That is actually correct. But even if we feel this is correct, we should read all the statements. Maybe something is even better than this. Okay. Such borrowing are not used to fulfill the government expenditure need, but needed for PSU. This is incorrect. Otherwise, we will not call them off-budget borrowing then. PSU borrow all the time, but if they are borrowing for government, then we use that term. C, but since the liability of the loan is not formally on the center, the loan is not included in the... Okay, see, sorry, we have to find incorrect. Okay. This is also very important. Okay, sometimes this can happen. So A is correct, B is incorrect so far. Okay, C is also correct, but since the liability of the loan is not formally on the center, it is not included in national fiscal deficit. That is why we call it off budget. This helps the country's fiscal deficit within acceptable limits. This is also correct. Okay? That is why we opt for it. So answer is B. B alone is wrong. Rest of the statements are all right. Always read the question very, very carefully, even if you miss out very small thing. Okay. Even though I know about this question, but every time you have to process a question. So if you miss out a small debate, I just didn't read this word carefully. Okay. So this can happen to any one of us. So being attentive is one of the foremost requirement in examination. I just notice this again. Okay. Now, which is or what is the withholding tax? So withholding tax is simply the tax that you deduct from someone, you hold it, okay, for the government, you basically pay it to the government, and it will be paid in advance against their income in the coming year. Okay. Withholding of tax, you are making payment to someone. Now out of that payment, you deduct some amount and you deposit it with the government. Government will withhold that amount for you, the receiver of the money. Employer pays salary to employee. Okay. Employer pays salary to employee. Now, if employer cut 20% of the income of the employee every month and deposit it in their name as TDS to the government, it will be withheld in favor of the employee. I am receiving income from my company, but I do not receive my full income. I receive income after TDS deduction. That TDS, however, is not gone forever. That TDS will be visible when I will pay my income tax at the end of a year. When I will try to pay my income tax at the end of financial year, then in my income tax statement, it will show that already this much of tax is paid in my name. If my tax liability is less than that, even I can get refund of that money also. So government is holding that amount for us. So that is withholding of tax. In this case, it is simply TDS. Okay. Even TCS is also correct, by the way, but TDS is the most standard term we use with withholding of tax. If both are there, we should be using D. Otherwise, A didn't have anything wrong. Okay. Tax deducted at the end of contract, tax deducted at the beginning of a contract. None of these are necessary. It can be either of them. But D is the best answer here. Okay. Last question for this session: how does the inflation tax work? So inflation tax is not an actual tax. Inflation tax is a notional concept, means assumed tax. Now, a government has burden to get a lot of money for expenditure. There are various sources to get money. One way, it can ask central bank to print money. Okay. Central bank can print money and can give to government. Public will not react to it because it will not directly affect the public immediately. Or government, alternatively, government can increase the tax. Over that, public will have problem. So usually what government do, they do not increase taxes. Rather, they finance their deficits by borrowing or even printing of currency. When government borrow, there is some inflation. Okay, prices increase a bit. But when government print currency to finance its expenditure, then the prices increase significantly. And when prices increase significantly, then what happens? The purchasing power of money go down. Our income, which would have been able to purchase, let us say, a certain basket of goods. Okay. Let us say somebody with a 10 lakh rupees of annual income was able to buy a certain basket of good. Okay. Now there is inflation. Prices have increased. What you could buy for 10 lakh earlier now require 12 lakh. And if you still have 10 lakh income, that means you can't afford that basket of goods. And that means your purchasing power has gone down and basically your income has decreased. Real income has decreased, not the nominal income. So inflation tax affects the real income, not the nominal income. And this is not an actual tax. This is the indirect effect of the government borrowing, or particularly printing of currency. That is the first thing that creates it. Now look at the answers. The government print more currency, which cause inflation, and the public reduce their purchasing power. Okay, looks fine. Second, government print more currency, which reduce inflation. It gets wrong here. C, the government print less currency. It already is wrong. It is also wrong. Okay, so A is the answer. This is how we define the inflation tax. So these type of news have been in discussion, debate, or in newspaper last year. Okay, with that we have also covered the current affairs here. And with this we are ending this session. Okay, and I hope this session has been helpful to you, and if you like it, please share it. It's a small YouTube channel and it can grow with your support.